Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Playbook Innovation Exchange. This afternoon's call is going to be hosted by Ben Siegel. He's the Executive Director of the 21st Century Cities Initiative, the publisher of the Playbook. Ben?
Great. Thanks so much, Carolyn, and welcome, everyone. Before I jump in, let me just give a quick shout out to Carolyn and the team at the OMB Community Solutions Project for setting this up and for leading this great initiative. And I especially just want to call out a couple of people who were so helpful to us in the development of the Federal Local Partnerships Playbook. And that's Tara McGinnis and her team, and especially Victoria Collin and Mary Ellen Wiggins and Elizabeth Garlow were all great resources for us as we develop this playbook. And in addition to them, we were able to engage with a number of team leads and team members from folks participating in Strong Cities, Strong Communities, Promise Zones, and some of the other federal task forces and teams out there across the country. So let me quickly, before diving in, start with a couple of logistics and housekeeping items on our webinar. So first off, everyone, when you entered the webinar, you're automatically muted. And we ask that you remain muted throughout the call just so that we can control background noise. We do, however, want this call to be interactive. And we've built in a good amount of time to do Q&A with you all. And the way that we ask that you do questions and answers is that in the webinar room, down at the bottom of the screen, there's a chat function.
Yeah.
So if you go down and you
how you join,
just again, if folks could mute their lines, that would be great. That's an example of some background noise. So if folks can in the webinar room, there's a chat button down on the bottom toolbar. If you go ahead and click on chat, you'll see pop up on the right side the Zoom group chat window. So you can use that feature to ask questions throughout the webinar. You don't have to wait. Feel to kind of type in a question. Just make sure that you target your question from the little to drop down to be set to everyone. And we'll be able to see that question. And then when we get through the presentations, we will answer the questions and have a conversation that way. So again, thank you for following those rules, and we're looking forward to being able to use that feature to chat with you all. So let me, before jumping in, just quickly overview of kind of how we're going to do the presentation. So I'm going to lead us off to give a little bit of background about this playbook and kind of the genesis of it and how we developed it and what's in it, as well as kind of a quick road test of the key features of the playbook. Then I'm going to turn it over to Scott Stolman, Senior Policy Advisor with the EPA and the former team lead for the SC2 team in Fresno, who's going to talk through the Fresno case study we have in the toolkit in the playbook, and specifically how the work in Fresno kind of followed along the different sections in the way that the toolkit, the playbook is outlined. And then from there, we're going to turn it over to my colleague, Mac McComas at the 21st Century Cities Initiative, who is going to talk through some of the functionality features of our Gitbook format and how users like all of you can log into Gitbook to make comments and to add content to the playbook. And then finally, we'll have time for Q&A. So with that, let me provide a little bit of background on kind of where the playbook came from. So Mac, if you want to jump forward to the next slide so folks can see the playbook itself. Okay, there we go. So that's that is the kind of home screen of the playbook. When you log in, you can see the URL up at the top there. It's playbook.21cc.jhu.edu. So just as a little bit of background, 21st Century Cities Initiative is a new project at Johns Hopkins University that was launched last year that is focused on supporting cross-disciplinary research in partnership with cities on issues around placemaking and neighborhood transformation and place-based initiatives. And I joined the initiative in March after spending 6 years at the Department of Labor, and from April 2015 to March 2016, I led the federal task force working with the city of Baltimore. And so in addition to all of the resources we were able to plug into in developing the playbook, was also able to use some of my own personal experience working on interagency projects serving local communities. So in terms of just a little bit more on kind of why we created the playbook at the 21st Century Cities Initiative, so kind of the work that we're doing and what we're focused on in this field of placemaking is kind of one where we take the view that the work of placemaking is very much kind of cross-disciplinary in its nature, and we're working in local communities and local places. It really entails engaging across a range of disciplines, systems, and really that's kind of the key way to make this work most effective. And for us, from a research perspective, that means as we study kind of placemaking and neighborhood transformation and community transformation, it's critical to make sure that we're, bringing in disciplines from across the fields of sociology and economics and health and safety, housing, kind of the range of areas. And one of the things that, we find to be very important in this work is that not only is it cross-disciplinary from a research perspective, but, it's very much cross-disciplinary from a practice perspective. And so the way that, the federal government has been approaching this work over the past few years, as modeled by programs like Strong City, Strong Communities and Promise Zones and Partnership for Sustainable Communities, has been taking this approach of kind of collaboration across multiple agencies at the federal level and working with local communities. And for us, we thought it was important to kind of, as we mirror this type of approach from a research perspective, to document this work that the federal government has been doing in local communities through these interagency partnerships working with local communities. And so that was the idea behind developing this playbook that would really be used as a resource for kind of breaking down how these interagencies, cross-disciplinary teams work, the types of resources that they're most commonly accessing, and the other ways that they're able to assist and work with local communities. And for us, what's really critical here is that we recognize this work is still very much, forming, and that, a lot of these projects are still in their early stages. Even, SD2 and Sustainable Partnerships for Sustainable Communities been running for a couple years now, but, we still are learning, how these interagency teams are working with local communities and how that work is evolving. So for us, as we developed this playbook, that's why it was very important that we could do it in a format where we would be able to kind of engage, federal practitioners as this work is taking place in real time, and to frequently update the playbook, several times a year, so that we could, capture the work as it evolves. And I'll get into a little bit more of that in a minute. In terms of, you know, who the Playbook's intended audience is, we designed this playbook as a resource for federal employees. And so this is specifically designed for federal staff who are working on specific initiatives with other agencies and in service to local communities, as well as, you know, feds in national offices, you know, whose programs, who oversee programs who are, that are being implemented in local communities, as well as, you know, federal folks in field offices and district offices and regional offices who, you know, who engage with local communities. And so it's really intended to be a resource for, you know, a wide range of federal employees engaging local communities, whether or not it's a specific place-based initiative they're working on, or just simply providing information or service through a specific program to local community within a single agency. And in addition to that, we view the playbook also as a resource for local stakeholders. So it's kind of a way for the local communities that federal agencies are working with to kind of get a better understanding or see how federal agencies you know, are approaching this work, both in terms of working across federal agencies to work in a coordinated fashion with local communities, as well as, you know, how federal agencies are approaching their direct engagement and work with local communities. So with that, let me just walk through kind of what's inside of the playbook and kind of how it's organized, and give you a little sense of kind of how it's designed. So the playbook is organized into 3 main sections, and as I'm talking, we'll kind of scroll through and kind of click through different sections of it. So the 3 main sections, let me just list what those are, and then we'll go into each one to show you how they work. But in addition to 3 main sections, we have this intro section, which is up on the page right now, which just gives a little bit of background on the playbook itself. But the 3 main sections over on the left, the first one is what's indicated on the left bar, team plays. And that is kind of what we formally are calling the interagency federal team plays. So this is the kind of plays, if you will, of the playbook. And I will come back and kind of get into the details of this, but this kind of goes through the different steps of how teams are set up and operated. The second section is the federal assistance section. And so that section looks at kind of the most common types of federal programs that have been used through various place-based initiatives. And again, I'll come back to this. And finally, the third section is a set of case studies. So right now we have 3 case studies, but this is an area where we're especially interested in building over time by working with folks like you on the webinar who are doing this work in the field. So let's jump back up to section 1, and that's the interagency, the federal team plays section. So again, just by kind of how this was developed, we put together this series of plays, and in total, we have about 20 plays that are outlined here, and the plays go through 3 different phases. And we developed the plays and the phases, again, based on, you know, kind of real life examples of how these interagency federal teams have evolved. And so it's based off of the 3 case studies we have, as well as, you know, the many other programs, you know, or teams that are operating in hundreds of communities across the country through, again, initiatives like Strong City, Strong Communities, Promise Zones, Strike Force, and a number of other of the community solutions projects. So just to outline the 3 sections, the 3 phases here, if we click on phase 1, this phase is the kind of what we refer to as the startup, assessment, and short-term activities phase. And this, we outline 8 plays in this phase. And let's take a look at kind of the first play here. What I'd kind of note is that with each of the plays, what we've done is we've tried to keep this very kind of like brief and to the point. We have a little bit of a kind of description of what the actual play is. And then underneath the description, we include a checklist. And so the checklist is really intended to kind of tick off, the key things or key features to keep in mind as you're implementing this play. And then below the checklist, we include a few questions to consider. So as you're implementing this play, are you, keeping in mind, these different thoughts or questions. And so as I'm talking, we can just scroll down and you can see kind of play 1, play 2 here. But within the first phase, the real focus is on the establishment of the interagency team, identifying a federal central point of contact, developing a set of protocols for how the team will communicate, what the key agencies are that are part of the team. And then, what we certainly found with the various initiatives and projects is that it's really critical at the startup phase to kind of, kind of build the train as you're moving it, if you will. So to kind of get out into the field and do the assessments and work with the local community to really understand what the key needs are, what the key priorities are, but also keeping in mind the desire and the importance of really getting on the ground running and implementing some short-term activities and getting to some early outcomes and wins. And so kind of those kind of activities and approaches are outlined here in the 8 plays in this first phase. And one of the things that I want to emphasize is that we fully recognize with the playbook that this is certainly not a one-size-fits-all type of approach. One of the things that I think the community solutions team in their leadership in coordinating these initiatives has been very clear on is that the work of kind of working in local communities is by no means one-size-fits-all. And what makes this work really effective is the ability to customize the work for a specific local community. So we approach the playbook as a way to provide kind of, overarching plays and steps, but very much recognizing that within these plays, there's going to be a lot of variation. And in some communities, it might be that, there needs to be more done on the assessment side. In other communities, it might be, there are, more federal agencies involved, than in other communities. So there's a lot of variation within the plays. And there might even be, as this work evolves, there might be certain really critical plays that we're missing and that we want to include here. And that's something we want to make sure to rely on all of you on who are working, on these types of projects to provide comments to us and share, anything that's missing or that's not as relevant or that's useful and the like. And we'll get into that in a little later, how you do that. So moving on from phase 1, we go into phase 2. And phase 2 is what we call the ramp up to full implementation and midterm activities. So at this stage, in phase 2, the plays are very much focused on kind of moving on from kind of the startup activities and some of the kind of early outcomes and really kind of building out a couple of key focus areas, that the interagency team is focusing on with the local community. And as part of this, as you see with play 1, and we can just kind of scroll down here, maybe a little slower. Part of this is, the need to, make sure that the team, is set. And in many cases at this stage, there might be turnover in the key contacts from the different, agencies that are part of the team. But kind of having that culture of, being focused on action, but also being focused on flexibility and working with the local community. So So as we scroll down here, you can see that in this section, we've got 9 plays. And again, this is really kind of the real meat of many of these projects. And, you know, the work, you know, I'm not getting too much into like the time periods of the work, because again, that will vary from local community. But generally, you know, we would expect phase 1 is anywhere between 6 months and a year, you know, maybe a little longer depending on how the team evolves. You know, phase 2, you know, can be anywhere from, you know, the 9 months to 1 year in period up to 2 years, maybe even 3 years. Again, it depends on kind of local community and how the work's evolving. But the focus here on phase 2 is kind of getting to the stage of, you know, having kind of key areas of focus and really having kind of the kind of targeted projects and types of assistance up and running. And then finally, we can move down into the 3rd phase, and that is the phase that we call sustaining or finalizing the work in long-term activities. And quite frankly, this is the phase that many of kind of the local place-based initiatives are still in, and we're still learning what this kind of final phase looks like. You know, in some cases, this phase includes, you know, kind of an actual program close down. So, you know, in some cases with, you know, SD2, it got to the stage where the team's work ended, the person who was located in the mayor's office, you know, left, and the work kind of closed down, but there's still a process for maintaining relationships and keeping connected to see some of the longer term activities through. In other cases, the work might move into more of a kind of longer term sustained team, where a project that maybe included 10 federal agencies, kind of as it goes into its longer term phase, goes down to a team maybe with reps from 3 agencies, you know, who are working kind of over a longer term with a local community. In truth, though, this phase is one where we're still understanding what it looks like in various communities, and over the next, you know, year, 2 years, 3 years, this is an area we especially want to make sure we are building out and adding more content to, based on the actual practice in the field. So that's the first section. So quickly on to section 2. The next section here is where we have begun, and I say begun because again is an area we want to build on, but where we've begun to outline some of the more common types of federal assistance that have been utilized by the various place-based initiatives and community solutions initiatives. And so we've broken this up into 3 broad categories. The first category is financial assistance, which is, of course, the category that local communities always want to know about first. And what we've done within the financial assistance category is we created a few subcategories on the types of financial assistance. Again, this isn't an exhaustive list, but these are the ones that tend to be the most common types of financial assistance that have been leveraged within various place-based initiatives. And so we divided into 4 categories here. So first is demonstration projects, and we give a couple examples of the types of agency demonstration projects that have been used in local communities. The second is disaster grants. So again, in many of the communities where interagency teams are working, oftentimes the team's work is in response to a specific crisis. We do have the disaster recovery framework that's been created out of FEMA that we reference and connect to a lot within the playbook here. And the National Disaster Recovery Framework is kind of mirrors, you know, in many ways, kind of the work we've outlined. And obviously the FEMA resources are one set of disaster grants, but as we scroll down a little more, you know, we can see there are other agencies that have disaster assistance that can be kind of put into place in response to different types of crises or disasters, Department of Labor's National Dislocated Worker Grants, Department of Education's Project School Emergency Response to Violence grants as well. So a couple of examples there. And again, these are kind of programs that we want to build on over time as this work evolves. With each of these, we just tried to provide pretty basic information on the name of the program, applicants, primary purpose, and then how to apply. The next category is competitive grants, discretionary grants, and cooperative agreements. Again, these are grants that communities can apply for, but these tend to be ones that have really been utilized and targeted and steered towards some of the place-based initiatives. And then third and finally are formula or block grants that can be a good resource for supporting some of the kind of community interagency type of work. The next category is training and technical assistance. One of the things we have found with the community solutions initiative is the tremendous value that training and technical assistance provides and creates in local communities. And so we've outlined some of the more common TNTA types of programs that have been used, and this includes programs where local communities can just request for assistance, as well as other technical assistance programs that a local community would have to apply for on a competitive basis. So we just scroll through, and again with these, we just list the name, of the agency and the program and the purpose, and then how to apply. And again, the idea for this is that, again, from the user standpoint of a federal agency, a federal employee, this is something that you can use in your work with a local community, even if, you are with HUD and, you want to provide information on DOJ or DOT, those resources are in here. And then the final section, or the final piece, I guess, of the federal programs is what we like to sometimes refer to as the soft assistance. So this is, in many cases, the type of assistance that doesn't go by a formal name, but is oftentimes the most useful and valuable assistance over time with these partnerships with local communities. And this is the type of assistance that only, the federal government and federal employees can provide. And that's assistance that we term here as program, partnership, and resource development assistance. And so, some of the most valuable type of assistance is the convening power that federal agencies have in being able to convene local stakeholders to identify needs, identify resources and opportunities in the community, and begin to build partnerships. We also see in here kind of the ability of federal agencies to connect larger national initiatives into local communities, and the ability of federal agencies to help identify other forms of resources, federal or beyond, that the local community might be able to tap into. And finally, we have our 3 case studies for Baltimore, Detroit, and Fresno. The way that the case studies are organized, if we click on one of the case studies here, we organize the case studies around kind of 3 phases that I just walked through. So we kind of try to keep it brief, but identify, for example, within Baltimore, phase 1, here's how the startup and short-term activities work. Phase 2, here's how they went to full implementation. And then in the case in Baltimore, phase 3 is still an untold story. And so that work is continuing. And then we also try to outline within those phases some of the key types of federal assistance that we're tapped into. Finally, just at the very bottom, we provide references. As I'm sure many of you know, through your engagement with the community of practice, there's a number of kind of a growing library, if you will, of reports coming both from within government and outside of government on the work of place-based initiatives, federal task forces, and other interagency partnerships with local communities. So that's the overview, and what I would just want to kind of close with before turning it over to Scott is, I can't emphasize enough, how much the development of this playbook relied on work taking place in the field. how much this playbook is still a work in progress. And as we get into later in the call on the webinar, Mac will show you how you can actually go in, log into GitHub and get into the Gitbook and provide comments and add content that over time we'll be able to build into future versions of the playbook. And just kind of my final piece is that, as we've been putting the playbook out into the field and talking to, federal employees and field offices and different agencies, we've been trying to get a good sense of how the playbook is being used. And just to give you one example, we've been in touch with the folks in the Los Angeles HUD field office, and they reported to us that they've been using the playbook for a couple of purposes. So one is they're building the playbook into some of the trainings that they're doing within the region. So this includes trainings with the HUD field staff in Los Angeles, who are working in the local communities within their jurisdiction, as well as some trainings kind of on place-based work. They're hosting a training in April with multiple agencies in the region, and they'll use the playbook as part of that training. So that's one way to use it kind of within your work. And then another way is that they are using it specifically with the Promozone teams in San Diego and the two in Los Angeles, kind of as a checklist. So as these teams are operating and kind of doing their work in those communities, they're using the playbook as kind of reference to help them build out their own checklist as their work evolves and as they're implementing projects with the local community. So those are a couple uses. Certainly as new teams are forming, the playbook is designed to, help the teams kind of map out how they want to set things up and kind of how they want to evolve their work. So with that, let me turn it over to Scott, who's going to walk through a specific example of the work that took place in Fresno and how this work has kind of reflected within the sections and the way that the playbook is outlined. And again, let me remind you as we're teeing Scott up here, if you have questions, please enter them into the chat box. So Scott will have a few minutes to give this overview, and then Mac will share kind of the functionality of the Gitbook, and then we'll answer some of these questions. So Scott, let me turn it over to you.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. Okay, hi, my name is Scott Stolman. I was the SC2 Fresno team lead from 2011 to 2014. I work for EPA, and I'm out of the Region 9 office in San Francisco. So I'm going to give a really brief presentation today that tries to illustrate a number of the plays that are in the playbook for the different phases and what those look like in Fresno. And I'll also just give a quick overview of one of the projects around downtown revitalization that we implemented. So next slide. Very quickly, for those of you who don't know where Fresno is, it's midway between LA and San Francisco in California's Central Valley. Next slide. So regarding the startup phase, as I mentioned, I was the team lead and I was full-time. And there were many key roles team lead plays and that I played. One of the biggest is facilitating communication. And as you can see by the sub-bullets, there was a lot of communication to facilitate. So you had the folks in DC running the whole initiative, the whole SC2 initiative, and I had to facilitate communication between Fresno team and those folks, but also with our Fresno partners, in this case, the city of Fresno. I also had to communicate to the senior management of all the agencies that had members on the team, as well as to my own EPA senior management, and last to the local community, in some cases the members, in other cases other partners. Team lead is also a project manager. I led the development of a work plan we put together jointly with the city of Fresno. I also led making adjustments to that work plan over time, tracking progress and reporting. I was also, I guess, what you call the dot connector in chief, as far as working across the various silos and figuring out how we could bring the best resources to bear in Fresno. Team lead is a catalyzer, very importantly, a relationship builder, and as one Fresno team member described my role, the conductor. Next slide. This image is of most of our team. The mayor is in the middle, Mayor Ashley Swearingen with the green dress. We had as many as 20 members on our team. A few of us were full-time, most of us were part-time, and a handful were on call. Experience ranged from presidential management fellows all the way up to, we had the CIO from Department of Energy on our team. Most of the members were from regional or field offices, but we did have some folks from headquarters offices. Next slide. This is a list of the agencies that were on the Fresno team. There were 12. I was basically handed a team roster, so I didn't have to build my team. However, after we got a better sense of the work we were going to support in Fresno, I did reach out to FTA to add a team member from them, as well as SBA. And SBA actually had a field office in Fresno. Next slide. This is a photo of our federal team at work during one of our in-person meetings, and we did this several times a year. I communicated mostly, though, with the federal team, with the Fresno team, with weekly team calls. I also had weekly calls with the city of Fresno, and my points of contact with the city were the mayor's chief of staff and her deputy chief of staff. I also want to mention that in addition to the team calls and the calls with the city, we had weekly team lead calls where the folks leading the initiative in DC had weekly calls with the team leads of the various SC2 communities. And then I also would have one-on-one calls with team members or groups of the team members on the Fresno team who are working on a particular project. Next slide. This image is a meeting between our Fresno team and the mayor's executive team. And we tried to do this at least twice a year. The playbook mentions the importance of kickoff meetings, and we had a kickoff meeting like this where we met with the mayor and her team. It lasted almost a week in Fresno. Next slide. I just wanted to share with you, this is a screenshot of the agenda, at least the first day of that kickoff. If you can read it, you can see the mayor brought us on several tours of some key sites for us to learn more about some of the projects we might be supporting. We had a dinner between our federal team and the mayor and her team. If I had shown you the second page of this agenda, the whole morning of the second day was the mayor giving us, the federal team, a presentation on Fresno, its challenges and its goals. And she also included what we termed a wish list. And from that wish list, that initial wish list in the presentation, that became the basis for our work plan, which eventually included 10 focus areas. Next slide. This is these are the 10 focus areas that were in our work plan. We eventually developed a much more detailed work plan than just these focus areas. But as the playbook mentions, we did a lot of listening. We started with understanding what the city's needs and goals were, and then we worked backwards to find a resource or to create a resource that could meet the need and advance the goal. And it took us 3 months actually to put together our first year's work plan. Next slide. So now I'm going to quickly cover the one particular project around downtown revitalization and how that got implemented. Next slide. So the situation was Fresno's downtown had been in decline for many decades, and the mayor and the city strongly believed that the key to revitalizing downtown was to turn a failed pedestrian mall called the Fulton Mall back into the city's main street using complete street practices and reconnecting it to the city's street grid. They estimated this would cost about $20 million, and none of which the city had at the time. Just want to reinforce this was the mayor's #1 priority from day one from when we met her, and she really did view it as a linchpin to downtown revitalization. Next slide. This image is the Fulton Mall. The color image shows a photo at night, and that was pretty typical. There was really no people on this mall. It was very much underperforming. The photo in the upper corner shows what this mall, when it was a street, looked like back in its heyday. Next slide. This is the image the city put together as the vision for the future of Fulton Street. Next slide. This shows some of the resources, just some, that we brought to bear to basically help the city get to the point where it could redevelop and revitalize that Fulton Mall and make it back into a main street. I'm not going to go into each of these, but I do want to emphasize something that was said earlier. Technical assistance. We did a lot of technical assistance. We did a lot of capacity building, and we did a lot of supporting planning in our first year of working with Fresno. The technical assistance in particular was very critical in filling gaps, informing city policy, and helping overcome barriers that had basically stalled efforts. So some of that technical assistance took the form of using contractors. Other technical assistance was, for example, Department of Transportation, facilitating historic preservation and environmental review issues around the redevelopment of the Fulton Mall. I do want to point out one resource that's listed here, a financial resource. Early on, Department of Transportation brought to the attention of the city a fairly unknown grant program of theirs that could fund environmental review and preliminary engineering. The city applied for it and got it, and that really was what provided the catalyst, the initial funding catalyst to redeveloping Fulton Street. Next slide. So all of this, and again, I'm summarizing this tremendously, all of this eventually led to what culminated in 2013, which was the city being selected to receive funding with a Tiger grant for almost $16 million to redevelop an 18 square block area around the Fulton Mall and including the mall. So in year two, this is when we really focused on implementation with financial resources. I do want to point out that the city had applied the year before for the Tiger program and was not selected. So one of the things we did, one of the forms of technical assistance that we provided, was we arranged a debrief from the DOT Secretary's office with the city to help explain why they weren't selected and to give them information they could use in future years and future applications. So this image is of the groundbreaking that took place earlier this year. And the last slide talks briefly about the ramp down or sustain phase. We had our capstone meeting where our EPA Administrator McCarthy, attended in November of 2014. We kept what we called an SC2 light engagement with a few of the core agencies. We kept that up and running for about another 6 months after November 2014. And we continue to make ourselves available to the city. We continue to make ourselves available even to this day to support them in any way we can. And the mayor likes to cite that 1,000 housing units have been completed or are currently under construction in the downtown area since we did the SC2 initiative. And they also calculate that there has been $66 million in private investment since February 2014 in the Fulton Street area. So that's the very quick overview.
Great, Scott. Thank you so much. That's really amazing work. And you know, you know, the way that Scott presented kind of the evolution and the work in Fresno, you know, really, you know, closely follows the plays and the phases within the playbook, as well as, you know, some of the DOT and EPA and other specific resources and assistance he mentioned is reflected in the playbook as well. And you know, really something to emphasize here is the amount of capacity building and technical assistance provided by the Fresno SC2 team, you know, was so critical in, you know, kind of really getting to some of those outcomes around the revitalization and the access to the $17 million Tiger grant. And that, you know, I would just note within the playbook cuts across both kind of formal technical assistance, training and technical assistance programs, as well as some more of that kind of soft type of assistance. I mentioned the kind of program assistance, and a lot of that is strategic planning type of assistance, capacity building, partnership development, just assistance in identifying what the kind of best resources are that kind of match and fit the local needs and capacities. So with that, Mac, let me turn it over to you. And we want to now kind of turn to how all of you on this webinar and please share with your colleagues can help us out, both kind of within our initiative at 21cc and keeping this playbook, up to date, but also helping out, federal employees across the country who are currently, engaged in this work or will be engaged in this work in the future, and how we can keep this this playbook, really updated and live with kind of the latest developments. And as Mac is talking, again, let me remind folks, if you do have questions, you can enter them into the chat box. So again, on the screen within the Zoom webinar, if you kind of hold your mouse over the bottom portion of the screen, you should get the little black toolbox that comes up, toolbar that comes up, and you can click on chat, and then the chat screen will pop up on the right, and you can enter a question and just make sure after the toolbar again at the bottom, it's selected on everyone. And we will collect those as we go. So Mac, let me turn it over to you. Mac's our program coordinator at the 21st Century Cities Initiative, has really been the force behind getting the Gitbook up online and kind of managing the formatting of it. So Mac's going to walk through how to log in and actually make comments and use the discussion thread feature of the Gitbook. So Mac, take it from here.
Great, thanks, Ben. So as Ben said, this is a Gitbook, which I'm sure not all of you are familiar with. So you may be asking, why is this playbook a Gitbook, and why, not just a web page or a PDF that people can read? And the whole reason for that is to ensure that it's a living document, that it's not, we didn't just create it and put it up there and it's going to stay the same. We want to make sure that it would change as new information and insight came in. So we wanted to get your comment and your expertise on all the issues covered in this playbook. So there are three main ways that you can comment on the playbook. The first is if you hover over a paragraph, you put your cursor over a paragraph, you'll see this little plus icon come up on the side. So as you move through here, you'll see this one highlighted next to this paragraph down here. So you can comment in the line. So you'll press this little plus button, and then you'll get this sign in to comment. So in order to comment, you have to have a user account, and this just makes sure that we know who's commenting and we can respond to you. So then you sign up and go back, and then you can go back to the little plus icon and put your comment there right in the line. Another way to comment is on the Gitbook page. So you can access this through this top link right here, the Federal Local Partnerships Playbook. And you'll see there's a little about the playbook that you can read. Then there's an option to download it as a PDF if you just want to read it offline. You can click here to read the playbook as we were formerly. And you can also go to discussions. So you'll see in discussions here we have a couple discussions that we started right here. This was a comment that was made in line. So we're trying to get some feedback on how different teams are doing evaluation and how they're approaching evaluation. This was a discussion that was started right here on the Gitbook page, and we're just trying to get some feedback on how people are dealing with phase 3. And if you want to keep up to date on the discussions around this playbook, you can click on this little subscribe button, and you'll get an email whenever anybody posts a new discussion or makes a new comment on the book, and that way you can be up to date on everything that's happening. And if you make a comment, you know, it could be on a suggested change or resource we don't have, and then we'll get notified and we can incorporate that feedback into the playbook and ensure that it's the best document that it can be.
Great, thanks, Mac. And another point, you know, if you know, for some reason want to make a comment on the playbook, you know, but for whatever reason you don't want to use the discussion thread or you don't want to use the Gitbook functionality, we also encourage you to email us directly. So Mac's got up there now our email address. So you can send us an email to 21cc@jhu.edu, and feel free, you know, if you want to keep your, you know, comment anonymous, however it is, you know, we encourage you to email us any, you know, comments on specific plays, or, you know, on maybe plays that are missing, or other types of federal assistance that we don't have listed that you have found to be well utilized by local teams. You know, feel free to email that to us if you prefer not to use the comment features, and we will go in and we'll add it directly, either, you know, through the discussion thread or through a comment. And then our plan is that as we collect these comments over time, kind of depending how it evolves, we will go in and you know, actually update the Gitbook with the content that's delivered through the comments. And so so that's certainly something that we encourage folks to do. Couple of other points, and again, feel free if you do have any questions, or, you know, if you've had a chance to look through the playbook at all, and have any comments, or especially if you think there are things that are especially useful, or key items that are missing, you know, we definitely want to hear from you on that. You're welcome to, you know, ask us now through the chat area, or feel free to follow up and email us. But two other kind of pieces that I wanted to mention related to the playbook and this work is that, one, you know, we have been working closely with the Partnership for Public Service and the Community Solutions team at OMB, which has been leading the trainings on working in local communities, the place-based initiative trainings. That there's now been 4 of those trainings, and I know there's another couple that will be scheduled for 2017. And one of the kind of components of the 3-day training is introducing the playbook, and, you know, we're very much trying to tie the playbook and the content in there to those trainings. So if you've already done one of those trainings, or if you're going to do one of them next year, we look forward to engaging with you that way and updating the content in the playbook there as well. And then the other point is, you know, we very much want to kind of keep in touch with you, you know, again, as we use the playbook and as it evolves. So, you know, if one of the things that we are looking to do through our initiative to keep the playbook active is to set up kind of a series of focus groups with, you know, groups of federal employees, federal staff, working, you know, with local communities, especially those working across multiple federal agencies and local communities. So if that's something that you're interested in engaging with us on, kind of being part of a focus or feedback group, you know, we'd very much like to engage you on that. And again, you can email us at our email address, 21cc@jhu.edu, if you're interested in that. And then just my, you know, final point that I'll make is, you know, as we, you know, kind of see how the work with, you know, with these federal local partnerships evolves, from our initiative at 21cc, we're both interested in documenting it, you know, as we are doing with the playbook, and in providing resource and guidance for the actual practice. But then over time, we expect to focus some of our work on, evaluating these partnerships, and really from a process perspective, how they're working, kind of how they're leading to outcomes, and what, appears to be some of the, through research, what we can gather, kind of the best practices in how these partnerships can be organized and implemented. So that's kind of a feature that we'll look to kind of build out and update over time as we continue through the 21st Century Cities Initiative to be engaged in this work. So with that, we're just about at time. If there are any questions, we've got 1 or 2 minutes. Feel free to enter them into the chat bar. Let me also just take a minute to see, Carolyn, if you're still on, if you have anything more to add, or any other connections we can make back to the community of practice. I should add that the playbook itself is linked to the community of practice website, so you can access it that way. And again, we encourage you to get it out to your colleagues at your agencies, and other agencies who you're working with in serving local communities.
Yes, well, the playbook certainly is a vital and a very, very helpful resource for, I'm sure our community of practice members will find it very useful. And it's great that they have a way to engage by becoming a part of your focus group. So that's another way that we hope the community of practice will get involved, as well as through, happy that you emphasize that they'll be part of our upcoming trainings. Next year in 2017, more content and more commenting and modifications and additions to the playbook. So that's really what we're looking forward to.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Carolyn. And again, maybe just close it out, Mac. Why don't we just enter into the chat bar our email address, and please feel free to send us a follow-up email if you have any other questions or comments, or you want to engage with us through our focus groups or continued work. And again, our email address is 21cc@jhu.edu. So with that, let me thank Scott for your presentation and overview of the great work in Fresno, and in Matt for showing the functionality, and Carolyn for helping us set this all up. And we look forward to keeping in touch with you and to hearing how you're using the playbook, and what we can do to keep improving it and to make it a useful resource for folks who are doing this work. So well, thank you, and hopefully happy holidays.
Yeah, thanks, Ben, for hosting, and thank you, Scott and Mac as well. I want to thank all of our listeners as well from the community of practice, and just a reminder that our next Innovation Exchange will take place on January the 10th. At that time, we will hear from HUD and their place-based operational model, which is a series of initiatives to train and incentivize federal staff working with communities. So we look forward to that. Have a wonderful holiday, everybody. Thank you.